Welcome to this webinar on the process of buying a property in Spain. It's the second in our whole day of Spanish masterclass sessions covering all aspects of how to buy and live in Spain, the most popular country for our readers and listeners at the moment. My name is Liz Rowlinson, a property journalist, editor of Place in the Sun for 9 years. Not traveling much at the moment, especially not to Spain, but still enjoy talking to lots of buyers who are trying to get out there and doing their research like you. So I'd like to introduce my panel first, and also if you've got any questions as we go along, please pop them in the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to some after covering lots of the basics. So first of all, Alex Radford.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Liz. My name is Alex Radford. I'm an English solicitor and Spanish lawyer. My parents moved to Spain in 1981, and so I grew up in Spain, returned to the UK in 92 to go to university, and then I returned to Spain in 2003. So I started practicing as a lawyer in 99, returned to Spain in 2003, and I'm a partner with my lawyer in Spain. We have offices Costa Blanca, Costa del Sol, Almeria, Murcia, Mallorca, Tenerife, Bilbao, and Madrid. And we act for clients buying, selling, inheriting property in Spain, and also doing business in Spain.
Brilliant. And Jose Maria Lomax.
Hi, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is, as you said, Jose Maria. I'm a Spanish qualified lawyer. I work for a family law firm called Sun Lawyers that my dad and mum established since 1985. My mum is English, my dad is a Spanish lawyer also, and we have 6 offices across the Costa Blanca. We also cover the Costa Calida, the Murcia region, and well, we deal with any legal issue or matter that you'll need or require in Spain. Buying, selling, inheritance, wills, anything that obviously needs a lawyer involved, we're here to help.
Brilliant, yeah. And we should point out that, you know, using a lawyer when you're buying abroad is super essential. You wouldn't buy a property in the UK without doing so. And it's even more important for the reasons which we're going to go into in detail to use one when you're buying abroad, when you frequently won't speak the language, know the buying process. So first of all, I mean, Alex, can you point out why is it important, you know, elaborate on my point about why it's so important to use a lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, in Spain, what you do come across sometimes, Liz, is that a kind of keen agent will offer to provide conveyancing services. And that's a big no-no, because basically an agent is working really, you know, would have a conflict of interest and is primarily interested in their commission. So I'd always instruct an independent lawyer registered with the College of Lawyers. So all lawyers in Spain are registered with the College of Lawyers. We're registered with the College of Lawyers in Malaga. As an English solicitor, I'm also registered with the Law Society of the UK. And we would basically send you terms of business setting out our costs, the costs that you're going to incur in the purchase. We can always also set out a breakdown of the costs you're going to incur in the overall purchase process, because on top of the purchase price, you pay transfer tax and costs, and that can go up to 15%, depending on whether you take a mortgage and the region you buy. But basically, also, because we're registered with the College of Lawyers, we've got insurance. So if things go wrong, then you've got a body to claim against. Thankfully, you know, not many things go wrong. You've got insurance in place. And then also, you know, it's important, I think, Liz, to instruct a lawyer who specialises in buying property, not someone, you know, we had a purchase recently with some clients, and the lawyer on the other side was mainly a litigator. And it was, you know, most of the mornings she was in court. It was difficult to contact her and deal with and obtain documents from town halls, etc. So I think it's important to instruct a specialist conveyancing lawyer who speaks your language. And you've got to be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them and say, you know, what about these issues? Because sometimes you do have legal issues. And our kind of philosophy is, you know, we prepare a legal report, we obtain land searches in English and Spanish, which I think is amazing that Spanish land registers do that. We send our legal report to the clients. You know, 9 times out of 10, there's no major issues with the property, but sometimes there are issues, and it's important for people to pick up the phone and to have a conversation and understand the real legal issues. And then they can make a decision whether or not they go into the purchase or not, and not find out, 3 or 4 years later that, for example, the pool isn't registered or the boundaries aren't clearly defined, etc. So I think it's very important to instruct an independent lawyer, and I'd get them on board as soon as possible.
Great. We're going to go into a bit more detail about some of those points you touched on, but you said it's very important to use a property specialist lawyer. But Jose, it's also equally important in Spain, which is so sort of regional, different systems in different parts. It's important to use a lawyer that's based in Spain and a lawyer who's familiar with the regional practices, because they differ between regions, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's as Alex obviously went through. I think it's peace of mind. I wouldn't buy in a foreign country that you don't know the language, you don't know the laws, without a lawyer. I think, as I said, is for your benefit. I think it's peace of mind. As Alex also confirmed, it's very important he speaks your language and you have communication. I think it's something that you need to do, and obviously you need to trust your lawyer in Spain, because at the end of the day it's a big investment. Probably most of your savings go into that apartment or that property. I've even got clients that are selling their properties in the UK and investing in Spain and coming to relocate in Spain. So it's very important you find a local lawyer who speaks your language, and obviously you can trust and communicate with him without any doubt.
Brilliant. And things like transfer taxes vary between regions, right, don't they? So that's one fundamental. And while we're touching on that, Alex, you alluded to the fact I think we generally say it's between 12 and 15% to allow on top of your purchase costs. But then what can you give us a ballpark about how much using your lawyer? That's included in that, I think, 12 to 15%. But what should you allow?
Yeah, so basically, so if you're buying a property for 150,000 euros, typically legal costs are 1% of the purchase price. So they would be 1,500 euros plus IVA, which is VAT. VAT is 21% in Spain, so you're talking a legal cost of 1,815 euros. On top of that, depending on the region you buy it, so starting in the Canaries, transfer tax there is 6.5%. Coming over to the mainland or Andalusia, it's 8%. Going to the Costa Blanca, the Valencian region, it's 10%. Catalonia, it's 10%. And on the Balearics, it's 8% as well. Murcia is 8% as well. So, and then you've got notary fees and land registry fees as well. Notary fees, land registry fees on a purchase of 150,000, you're probably looking about 700-800 euros. So 700-800 euros for the notary fees, 700-800 euros for the land registry. On top of that, you're going to pay NIE numbers, typically about 86 euros, I'd say, for each NIE. And that's basically it, really. So and then if you take out a mortgage on top, then you're going to pay additional costs there, because you'll have to pay for the bank to register the mortgage in your name. If you buy a brand new property, then you pay what's known as stamp duty, AJD, and that's typically up to 1.5%, depending where you buy. And brand new property, for example, in the Canaries, that's 7% is the VAT. And then you pay stamp duty on top. And then, for example, in the Costa Blanca, Valencia region, transfer tax is 10%, VAT is 10%. And if you bought brand new property, you pay VAT and stamp duty at 1.5%, so it's 11.5%. So I think it depends on whether you buy a resale property, Liz, or a brand new property. But it's important to have those costs, be aware of those costs when you start budgeting for the purchase.
Brilliant. You touched on an NIE number, Alex, but I know you have, and I think probably Jose has been doing the same, that while a lot of buyers are perhaps not flying out to see properties at the moment, there's a lot they can do in preparation to, getting your lawyer on board can be, even before you've got out to see anything. You should get that all organised, have conversations, and they can sort out your NIE number, and I'm not sure they can open a bank account for you, but can you explain what they can do before you actually get out to see properties, Jose?
Yes, absolutely. Well, recently, due to the circumstances of obviously the COVID-19, we had a big demand of British citizens looking for property, but obviously not able to come over to Spain. So what we've obviously suggested that they do a power of attorney in the UK. It's a very simple and straightforward procedure. You'll need to go to a public notary that we can find for them. They'll sign this power of attorney that we'll prepare. And with this power of attorney, basically we can act in their behalf in Spain. We can apply for their NIE numbers. We can open a Spanish bank account. And as soon as obviously they can come over and choose their dream home, we can then obviously get the completion done and they can move in. So I think it's something that a lot of people can think about, because you can start the ball rolling, you can start all the legal side ready just for you to obviously come over and choose your right property.
Brilliant. And Spain is a notarized system, Alex. What can you just explain very briefly the difference between a lawyer and a notary? Because the notary doesn't necessarily act for you, do they?
Yeah. So basically, a notary is someone who passes their law degree and they continue to study, and they pass their notarial exams, and then they're given a place in a town somewhere in Spain where there's a space, and they become a notary there. And basically, the notary here is quite an important person. To buy a house, you need to go before the notary and sign the deed. A deed in Spanish is an escritura. To sign a will, you need to go before the notary, incorporate a company, sell a house, deal with an inheritance, and even sometimes signing off the accounts of companies. So the notary is quite powerful. If you took out a rental contract for a car, you'd have to sign it before the notary. So we've got notaries across our towns in Spain, and they will basically they don't, unlike say countries like France where the notary will take over the process. In effect, the seller's lawyer and the Spanish lawyer, they agree the terms of the deal. So you found a property, we agree the terms of the deal between ourselves, any terms and conditions, etc. And then once we've made, maybe paid the reservation fee and then exchange contracts, then we send all the information about the purchase or sale to the notary. And the notary's got officials, and their officials will prepare the deed. The notary will review that, and then they'll send us a draft. We'll approve that. We'll agree the final figures. So if there's any debts on the property, they're going to come off. Any town hall rates outstanding, mortgages, we'll hold back monies for that. And then basically we go along to the notary, we sign the deed. And the notary will then notify the town hall that the property has been sold, and they'll also notify the land registry that it's been sold as well. And then the buyer's lawyer has 60 days to register the property and get the deeds submitted to the land registry. And just before completion, when we start talking to the notary about a potential purchase, the notary will contact the land registry, and they'll open a kind of period of 10 days. They'll apply for a land search, and that's called a nota simple continuada, so basically a continuous land search. And that's notifying the land registry that a purchase is imminent, so that if any debts were levied on the property during that 10-day period, the buyer's lawyer would be notified and would be registered. So the notary plays that role. We go along to the notary, pay them the balance, we pay the seller the balance of the money in front of the notary. The buyers sign, the sellers sign, or if we're attending using the power of attorney, we sign on behalf of our clients. Notary signs, and then the notary holds onto the originals. So all the original documents, Liz, so the original signatures, even a Spanish will, they hold on to the originals and they issue a first copy. And you might think, okay, what happens when the notary dies or passes on and moves somewhere else? Well, a new notary will come in and take over their protocol numbers. So there's always a continuation of that. And so you'll always be able, if you carry out a land search on a land search will say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith bought before X notary in Torrevieja on X date, you'll be able to go to that notary or their successor and apply for a copy of that deed.
Great, thank you. And just backtracking a little to the listeners might not know what an NIE number is. I know that on the panels before, when we used to do the shows, we always used to talk about an NIE number being for life. And even if you bought a property in Spain a few years ago, I think the NIE number still stands. Jose, can you just explain to British people who don't, what is an NIE number?
Yes, well, basically an NIE number is an ID for foreigner citizens. Obviously, you need this number to be part in the Spanish system, and well, it's for life, as you said. Well, I've got some clients that unfortunately they've lost their NI numbers. You can always ask for a duplicate, and even they don't have the number physically, so we can ask and apply for them without any issues. It's also important, and this is something quite recent, that if you're thinking of buying a car, for example, Tráfico, the Spanish authorities are asking for this NIE number to be updated. So you'll need to ask for a duplicate for less than 3 months, so you can obviously purchase a car. So that's basically what you need to purchase a property in Spain, be part of the system. I would suggest, well, it's much easier to apply for an NIE number through your lawyer, but you can also apply through the Spanish embassy. It takes a bit of more time, but it's 2 options there to think about.
Okay, and you obviously have to open a bank account, and if you're going for residency, that briefly, Alex, you have to have certain amounts of money in your bank account for the residency application, don't you? If you could just touch on that briefly.
Yeah, so basically, Spain introduced a new residency law on the 6th of July this year, and basically across the country, you've typically got to have up to €9,000 in a bank account each. And then they want to see income of €850 a month, and they'll look at UK bank statements and Spanish statements. We set up a website dealing specifically with residencies, www.getspanishResidency.com. And basically, the procedure is someone comes to Spain, they have to have either a rental contract for a minimum period of 6 months, or they own a property, money in the bank account, and if they're under the age of 65, they need private medical cover. If they've retired, then they can apply for Form S1 from Newcastle Social Security. And those are basically the 3 requirements. And we're now applying for residency when the clients are online. They have to register on the census at the local town hall. And so long as you've got the padron, which is the census, proof of where they live, the bank statements, money in the bank account, and the health insurance, we can apply for the residency. So you apply for the residency, that then gets approved. And then clients have then got to we go down to the authorities with them, the Office of Foreigners or police station, and they have their thumbprints taken, they hand over a photograph, and then about 2 to 6 weeks later, they receive their new TIE card, which is basically, you talk about an NIE. NIE means a number of identification for foreigners. A TIE is a card for identification of foreigners. And that's going to be a useful document, Liz, because at the moment, basically British people, traveling around Spain should be carrying their passport all the time. But with a new TIE card, you won't have to do that. So, but basically, the requirements are if you're living in Spain for more than 3 months a year, you have to apply for residency. And if you live in Spain for more than 6 months a year, then you become what's known as a Spanish tax resident, and you pay tax in Spain on worldwide assets and income.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're gonna cover a few more bits before going to cover off some questions. But one, we've raised the subject of Brexit and the end of the withdrawal agreement at the end of this year. So Peter Melnick asked, how will Brexit affect UK property hunters after the end of the year? And we should point out that really it won't affect second holiday home purchasers at all. And and you know, in terms of the residency, you've touched on that, Alex. But I mean, people should really try and get all their paperwork and bank account, etc., sorted by the end of the year, shouldn't they?
Yes, I agree. I obviously suggest or encourage people that if they have the idea of coming over to Spain, I think it'll be much easier to obviously arrange an appointment and come and see a lawyer, a local lawyer, as I said, to go through all the process. It's very important also the job of a lawyer, because you know, I don't know if somebody is aware, but if you purchase a property in Spain, you could inherit the debts. So it's, as I said, it's essential that a lawyer or professional goes through all the legal checks, all the searches on the property to confirm that the property hasn't got a mortgage or a loan or any utility bills, any debts that you can inherit. If obviously there's nobody there to check them for you, it could be a problem. So as I said, I encourage people to come over, you know, to sit down, arrange an appointment and talk to a lawyer and see, you know, what options they have to agree residencia or purchase a property, or even, you know, rent a property, because that's another option, to rent a property and obviously start to find and have a little wander in the areas they're looking in.
Liz, can I just add to that? So basically, you know, a lot of people are concerned, you know, can they get residency by the end of the year? And the answer to that is yes, they can, but I'd start the process as soon as possible. The purchasing costs for clients buying Spanish property this year, next year will remain the same. You know, the transfer tax is not going to change just because you're a British person buying. There's going to be no change in cost there. What will change, though, is we suspect is that basically, if at the moment, if a British person rents out their property, they've got to declare that income in Spain, and the applicable tax rate is 19%, and they can deduct the costs of the rental, so management fees, water, electric, insurance proportional to the rental. After Brexit, if there's no specific agreement in respect to this point, then that figure, the applicable tax rate for holiday rentals, holiday rental income, which has to be declared in Spain, will rise to 24%, and there'll be no deductions. So that's really the only issue we can see at the moment. Non-residence income tax, when you buy a property, the year after purchase, you've got to start paying non-residence income tax. At the moment, the rate is 19. At the moment, the rate is 19%. That may increase as well. We don't know. So, and the requirements for residency next year, Liz, we're in close contact with the British ambassador here in Spain and also the British consul locally. They are not aware of the potential requirements for next year, but we suspect that the financial requirements will be higher. So instead of having 9,000 euros in your bank account, you'll need to have more. But yeah, there's still time to get residency this year.
Brilliant. Okay, well, moving away from residency, we have a question on, I mean, the role of the lawyer. We've talked about helping you set up stuff ready for the purchase process, but it also begins when you start negotiating on a property. They will advise you. And Jose, we have a question from someone who says, you know, how much, if you could answer this relatively briefly, because it's very much dependent on the property, I realise, but how much under the asking price should a buyer make an offer?
Well, that's
it's
that's a difficult question for me. Yes, well, you know, you can always try with an offer. You know, you already have a no on that offer, so you know you can't really confirm if the owner will accept that offer. But I think the best option will be to talk to your agent. Obviously, the agent will help you out to get to that agreement. They can speak to the owners or sellers in this case, and in a way they can advise you if it's too low or if it needs to be increased.
Okay, great.
Liz, can I just add on that? I mean, this is a question that comes up all the time, and what I say to clients there is, I say, look, speak to the agent, find out more about the seller's circumstances, why are they selling, how long the property has been on the market for, and have they accepted or rejected any offers. And generally speaking, if they just brought the price down, then you might get a few €1,000 off it, but not much. But if it's been on the market for up to a year or longer, then I'd be going in at 20, 25% below the asking price and moving up gradually. And I'd say, generally speaking, you'd probably get a discount of at least 10% on the asking price. But it all depends on the seller's circumstances. There's no rule, there's no fixed rule of thumb here.
Yeah, and it depends how the Spanish market goes between now and the end of the year, when the tourism, the economic situation is going to really kick in. And another question, we are all from Helen Brooks, are all payments, deposit, etc., because the next stage is that when you've now done the negotiation, you might put down a deposit. Are they made through the lawyer, and should the offer be made through the lawyer, Alex?
Generally speaking, most offers are made directly by the clients through to the agents, and a lot of agents take the deposits. So typically you're looking at paying a reservation fee to take the property off the market between €2,500 and €6,000. But before you sign that reservation contract, I'd like to see it, because typically we would put in there a statement from the seller that the property is legal, it's all registered, it's got a license of first occupation, fit for habitation, and there's no breaches of planning permission. And if a seller includes that statement, I'm then happy for the payments to be made direct to the agent. But generally speaking, we prefer all the payments to be made through us. But as I said, there's a lot of agents out there, some are very good, and they've got a slick operation, and they basically take the money in, hold on to it, and they confirm that in their sales agreement or reservation contract, and they hold that money until completion, protecting their commission, of course. But that's the kind of standard procedure. But it's a question of, you can speak to your agent about that. If you want all your money to come via a lawyer, then that's not a problem either.
Okay, and then just slightly related to that, Christopher Astley asked, so if you're saying that we do not let estate agents handle legal aspects of the property purchase, and that's correct, because obviously the agent is only that you've got no one batting for your side. That's right, isn't it? They're just pursuing their ends, and they could be honourable, but they might not.
That's right. Yes. Well, as Alex said, it's peace of mind. I think you need somebody, local to trust, you can trust, and then who can obviously defend your interest. It's very important that, obviously, as you said, fights your interest. If there's any clause in the contract that needs to be changed, if there's any delays, that obviously you can speak to the sellers. You can speak to their lawyer. So I think it's peace of mind at the end of the day. And, our fees are much cheaper than in the UK. So, people think that, I'll try to avoid my lawyer in Spain, or obviously the person who will take over. And I don't think it's really worth it. It's a big investment. It's most of the savings of all your life. Why try to skip the lawyer? It's not.
Sure, and you can buy, when you get to buy the property, you can also you can buy it in one name, two names. We've got a question, Alex. Stephen Minshall says, "Can I buy a property for my children?"
Yeah. So basically, children have to be over the age of 18. If you're going to move to Spain and become a resident and spend more than 6 months here a year, then I'd suggest buy it in your own names, because there's tax allowances, etc., for becoming a resident and owning a Spanish property. But if it's only going to be used as a holiday home, then purchasing in the name of the children is a good option. It's got its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are that basically, I would only suggest you buy in the children's name, but you each, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith buying, their children will own the legal title, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith own a life interest in that property, so that when they pass on, then the children inherit the whole property. But basically, when they pass on, because they've only, they pass on and they're leaving a life interest, and the legal title is in the names of the children already, there's no inheritance tax in Spain. Okay, so basically, if you buy the property in the children's name now, then you are, if you live for 7 years, it's basically considered a gift in the UK, and it's a potentially exempt transfer. So it's coming out of your UK estate. So that's good because you're reducing your IHT liability in the UK, and you put in the children's names, you're reducing your Spanish IHT. So it is a good option, Liz, but you've just got to be aware of death, debt, and divorce of the children. So, divorce, think about a potential prenuptial agreement between your children and their future spouses. The children will need wills in place, and if they became bankrupt, then the trustee in bankruptcy can make ownership difficult. But by and large, parents owning a life interest in property, they cannot be evicted from that property. It's theirs. So it works if it's for a holiday home. I think it works really well.
Brilliant, thank you. And just very briefly, because we've got so many questions that we want to get through in the last 15 minutes. You mentioned it's very important to make a separate Spanish will for your Spanish property, isn't it, Jose? Could you just briefly say why?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's always also a peace of mind. Obviously, once you purchase a property in Spain, you become a Spanish property owner. If something unfortunately happened, you need to take this in mind, and it's important you do a Spanish will. This Spanish will only cover the Spanish assets, like your property, if you purchase a car, a boat, a jet ski, anything that you buy in this country, and also your funds in your account. So this will be completely independent from the British will. It'll only cover the Spanish assets, as I said. So, it's important that somebody like a professional, like a lawyer, obviously takes care of you. Unfortunately, something happened. So very important to make a will, absolutely.
And Liz, I would just add to that. So if people, people have got own a UK property and assets and have got Spanish will, then it's important that they let their UK lawyer know that they've got a Spanish will, because if they update the English will, the first clause of an English will is I revoke all form wills. And it's basically important that if they've got a Spanish will to say, I revoke all form wills except my Spanish will dated X, so that both wills work together.
Okay. We've got a lot to get through, but just on planning permissions, because an important part of the lawyer's process is checking or doing all the due diligence on the property, checking that things that are renovations have been done legally, etc. And a question from Maria Villas says, planning permission for a pool, does it differ between rural properties and urban properties? Do you need permission for an urban property? Alex, can you just briefly answer that?
Yeah, so basically, for an urban property, so all planning permission, you'd have to go to the town hall and find out what the planning requirements are in that area. But by and large, I'd say you get planning permission for a rural property. You get planning permission for a pool for an urban property, and that would be a kind of below ground swimming pool. And for a rural property, it's probably unlikely that you'd be able to get one. But what you could do is kind of put an above ground one in, which could be moved away. So, but we've acted for clients buying property across Spain, and what this is an issue that comes up when they say to us they want a pool. What we do is if we organise a survey for the clients, we'd instruct an architect on their behalf to contact the local town hall to find out exactly what the planning requirements are for that area. We had clients who bought a Lanzarote, they wanted a pool. We carried out that process. Town hall said yes. After completion, they then install their pool. So just eyes wide open.
Yeah, okay. And I'm going to whiz through a few more questions. The differences between the legal process, mainland Spain, Balearics. Well, same legal process, I'm thinking, but just different purchase taxes, as you've already alluded to. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, power of attorney being used quite a lot with Brits not being able to travel out. A question for you, Jose. Do legal fees increase if you give your lawyer power of attorney?
Well, in our case, we do add the cost of the power of attorney. But I don't really think it's obviously expensive to do a power of attorney. Our fees are €250, and that will include obviously this power of attorney to be signed at the notary. We will send somebody to translate that power of attorney, because the power of attorney will be in Spanish if it's done in Spain. If it's done in the UK, we'll send it in the two languages, and then obviously they'll need to pay the notary fees back in the UK. That depends on what notary, public notary in the UK. We'll be talking about between 200 to 300 pounds. So that's really the amount of our fees to do power of attorney. So I really think it's worth it, because you can always use that power of attorney and instruct your lawyer if you cannot come over, or even if you need to do something and you're not in the country. Recently, I had a client who was in Australia. He obviously rented his house. He forgot to put some money in his bank account, and his electricity was cut off. And he instructed us to obviously reconnect his electricity. We did that, and obviously he could rent the property without any issue. So that's the kind of things you can obviously help to get this power of attorney and get your lawyer to help you out.
Brilliant, thank you. Alex, question for you. Is there enough time to complete the application for the TIE before Brexit? What's the last realistic date we could move to ensure that?
Oh dear, Liz, that's a difficult one.
That's a good question.
What I'd say there is I'd start the process as soon as possible. Strictly speaking, people have until the 31st of December to apply for it. But I certainly wouldn't leave it until then, because there's a lot of paperwork to collate. It can take 3 or 4 weeks to get the documentation together. So you need bank statements, you need to go on the padron, the census. But in effect, the strict legal writing is you can apply up until the 31st of December, and then the Spanish authorities have got till the 30th of June to approve your application. But please don't leave it until the end of December. Yeah?
Okay, and briefly, you've touched on it there, Alex, about the padron. Could you really briefly just flag up, because we've had about 2 or 3 questions, what do you need for the TIE application?
So basically, the TI application is you need a rental contract of at least 6 months. So there was some confusion earlier in the year. Was it with 11 months or 12 months? But actually, a minimum period of 6 months. Okay, or you own a property. Once you've got the property rented or your own, you go to the town hall, prove that you're living at that property, and you register on the census. That's the padron. You get a certificate from them, and then basically you need bank statements either from the UK or Spain, confirm that you've got sufficient money to live in Spain. Typically, they're asking for up to €9,000 per person, and then €850 per month. And then health cover. So health cover, if you're under 65, private medical insurance. If you're over 65, you can apply the retired form S1. But if you have a look on our website, getspanishResidency.com, it's all set out there.
Brilliant. And we'll be talking about healthcare a bit later this afternoon, if anyone's interested in going into that. NIE number, a couple of quick questions. I know the answer from a previous webinar, that you each need an NIE number if you're buying a property. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Brilliant.
That's right, yes.
And
is there a cost to apply for an NIE number?
Yes, there is a cost. I think it's €7.90, and that's obviously the fee that you'll need to pay to the Spanish authorities. But that's not as easy, because you'll need an appointment. And nowadays, it's very difficult to get appointments if you're not a lawyer through the police station, because obviously it's a foreign office who gives you this appointments. So I would suggest, and this is my recommendation, you leave your lawyer to do your NI number, to apply for your NI number, but it's much easier than even getting it or applying it into the Spanish embassy back in the UK.
Okay, great. So Vanessa Bard asks, can you buy in Spain if you are American? The answer is yes, isn't it, guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
And also, do you need residency to buy a property? No, you don't. You can buy a holiday home.
You'll need your NI number.
Yes. Okay. Right. Brilliant. And someone asks, what do you need a NIE number if you have a DNI? This is a new one on me. If they're Spanish.
No, you don't.
Right. Brilliant.
No.
Okay. And once you have an NIE number, how long does it take to open a bank, etc., Alex?
Well, basically, what we're doing at the moment is, so if clients want to just get ready and put a power of attorney in place and apply for NIEs, that's what we're doing at the moment. We would send them power of attorney. They sign that in the UK before a notary. That comes to us. Typically within a week or 10 days, we've got the NIE, and then within 48 hours, we open a bank account. We open bank accounts with Sabadell. They're kind of one of the most foreigner-friendly banks. And yeah, that's the process. But I'd say from us sending you the power of attorney, coming back to us, obtaining the NIEs and opening a bank account, allow 3 to 4 weeks.
Brilliant. And while you're talking about timing, we should just say that the typical purchase process in Spain is, would you say 6 to 10 weeks? Ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, it can happen quite quickly, mainly because a lot of these properties are second homes, and people aren't getting involved in chains like they do in the UK. So I'd say between 4 and 12 weeks. If you've got a mortgage, then it takes slightly longer, Liz. And someone who's buying, we talked about, offers, what would you go in at? I would say if you're, get everything ready up front. So if you're going to take out a mortgage, speak to a mortgage broker, get an offer in principle from them. If you are still looking at property, make sure you get the NIEs, get the power of attorney and your lawyer on board. And then if you've got the cash in the bank, it's a great position. I'd say I'd go with an offer, a cheeky offer, and I'd back that offer up by saying, look, when we can complete in, say, 6 to 8 weeks. So you let the seller see, the money at the end of the tunnel. So you're a serious buyer, you've got everything ready, strong offer in, off you go.
Brilliant. I like the fact we got cheeky offer in one of our sessions as usual. Right, we're going to quickly whiz through. We've got 4 minutes. I just want to do some quick fire answers here. Jose, do you know that if the residency requirements if you're a UK citizen and you're married to a Spanish national, do you know if they're the same?
Yeah, well, I think they are the same, because obviously Residencia is an application individually. It doesn't really matter who you're married to. Right. Obviously, if you're single or married or widow, so it's something individually. So yeah, no difference.
Okay. And
Liz, just to add to that, so someone obtaining residency this year, if their spouse can't come this year to Spain and become a resident applying person, then once they've got residency, then the spouse can join next year and get residency on the same terms and conditions. And it would, for a Spaniard who's married to a Brit, that would be easier to obtain residency.
Okay. And then, Alex, you alluded to tax on rental property income. Would UK residents have to pay tax to Spain and also UK? No, because they've got a double tax. Is that right?
That's right. So basically, first of all, the income that you've been generated in Spain, because you've hired a property in Spain, so you declare that income here. But there's a double tax treaty between Spain and the UK. So let's just say you're a top rate taxpayer in the UK. The rate's 40%, but you would have paid 19% at the moment here. So you then just declare the 21% in the UK. Proportion costs of the rental can be deducted here, and I believe the UK HMRC unusually is a little bit more generous as far as deductions are concerned, so you might get a bit more off. But it's important then to speak to a UK accountant about that.
Brilliant. Someone else is planning to buy in November 2021. Can they get residency without a Spanish address? That's no, isn't it?
No, absolutely no.
Okay, and can you make offers on new builds? Briefly, I think the scope is far less. Do you agree?
I think we're moving into a different world. There's a lot of property out there. Again, you've got to find out the developer's circumstances. By and large, historically, you'd get maybe a few €1,000 off, or you might get the AC included, or you might be able to, add baths or showers, etc. Make some changes. It's harder to get a discount off a developer, but listen, I think you've got to try it. It's a new world. Again, if they've still got 7 or 8 properties left and they're sat there empty, then I would certainly put an offer in.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're virtually out of time, but just a quick one, a key one. Kathleen Minty asks, can you only live in Spain for 3 months, or is it 183 days? I think it's the latter, isn't it, Alex?
Well, but basically this year, if you get your residency this year, then you'll be able to live in Spain really for the rest of your lives. But what we're expecting to happen next year is that you'll only be allowed to live, come to Spain, you have to apply for a form of a visa if you're not a resident, and you'll be able to spend 90 days in a 180-day period in Spain.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we've virtually run out of time because we're whipping through a whole day of webinars today. Someone asks, is great advice, but can we find the answers? We'll collate some of the answers. There is a great section of answers to frequently asked questions from our last webinar series on aplaceinthesun.com. So have a look at that. But otherwise, do listen to the rest of the webinars that we've got on today, or I think the contact details for Jose and Alex are provided on our website. They'll be doing more webinars, I think, possibly. Yes. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry we didn't get through absolutely all of the questions. Hopefully we can address some in the rest of the sessions today and going forward. And thank you, Alex. Thank you, Jose.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.